Hey guys, I'm Ryan from RC Maker. Today we're going to be looking at part 3 of our A800 build tutorials. Today we're going to be going through chassis tweak and suspension tweak and how to get the most out of your car, making sure that the tweak's correct, that the balance left to right is correct, so that your car always drives perfectly. So today we're going to be going through tweak. Tweak's something that a lot of people overlook. They just build their car and just put it on the track. They don't really look at, they make sure the chassis is flat, but they don't look at how the suspension is lining up. They just set all the collars to the same and expect it to be exactly the same on a normal car or on an Automatics. They just measure the ride height front and rear and think that that's going to be enough to balance the car. Basically what you need to do is you need to at least check your chassis flat, so that's the first thing. So basically your top deck screws here, here, here and here, and your center grub screw. Obviously that doesn't matter as much as it doesn't pin the top deck down, but just after every race check your car is flat, put it on a flat board, loosen all those screws, do them back up. That's going to ensure that your chassis is flat and nothing's then translated through to the suspension. Your second form of tweak comes from your dampers and your shock springs. So like other cars, we've got spring differences, spring inefficiencies, different spring lengths on a normal car. On this car there might be subtle variations as well, so you can't actually do your ride height screws down the same amount left to right. That will also vary based off where your weight's positioned on your car as well. So first of all, what I like to do pretty much is first of all just feel the very beginning of your suspension movement. Obviously that's the most important. That's when your car is going to be rolling, that initial bit is going to be what makes the feeling of the car being aggressive or understeer or something. So we want to make sure that that initial feeling left to right is exactly the same. So that this is basically for all cars, Automatics specific. This is exactly how you do it. So I just feel the very initial up movement, and this one's actually coming up a little bit more. So what I'll do is screw the ride height screw in a little bit on that one and out a little bit on this one. Check it again. So now we've still got a little bit more, so we'll go in on this one, out on this one. Check it again. Okay, so now I've got pretty even movement. You can just use the weight of the chassis basically to pin the car down and just check left and right. And they're coming up exactly the same amount and under exactly the same force. Spin the car around, basically do exactly the same thing at the back. So we're going to be feeling left to right. The back's a little bit different because we've got a lot more droop at the back. So it's not quite as fine. So what you're going to need to do is basically just feel how much resistance. And with this one, I can feel that this side has a lot more up travel until it hits your ride height screw than this one. So we'll screw the ride height screw in on this one and out on this one to balance them. Check it again. Yep, that's a lot closer now. Cool, so basically after you've done that, you've got everything close left to right at least. I like to use setup wheels, so I'll then put the setup wheels on the car with setup nuts, and basically I like to do all of my tweak, all of my ride height, get everything perfect on the setup wheels, because obviously they're exactly the same for all four in diameter, whereas if you're setting up on tyres, you've got air gaps, you've got different air gaps, you've got slightly varying tyres, you might have a little flat spot on one. So yeah, I always like to use setup wheels. So I'll just chuck these setup wheels on. Make sure you do them nice and tight. So basically I don't use tyres for any part of my setup other than the very final part of checking the ride height. So basically you can ignore ride height somewhat whilst you're doing all this. Obviously it needs to be close, but it doesn't need to be exact, because what we're going to be looking at is the balance between the left and right, not actually the height exactly. We're just trying to get that balance even. Okay. So that's pretty much it. You've got your car with all four setup wheels. So basically now what we're looking for is when we pull the front or rear of the car up, we want both of those tyres leaving the ground at exactly the same time on their up travel. So basically there's a method to adjust this, and what it does is when you're working on the rear, you need to adjust the front screws. When you're working on the front, you need to adjust the rear ride height screws. So basically you can go ahead, start with either end, so the front Okay, so we've got quite a big tweak here. So what's happening is this one is still on the ground while this tyre is about 2 millimeters off the ground. So what we need to do to counteract that is we need to lower this corner of the car in order to bring that wheel down. So what you can do is, what I always do, half to that side, half to the opposite of this side. So we'll unscrew this one, 1/4 of a turn, screw this one in, 1/4 of a turn. Check it again. Okay, we're getting a lot closer now. So they're almost up at the same time. This one's still about 1 millimeter off the ground more than this one. So we need to drop this corner again. So again, another 1/4, and then in another 1/4 on this one. And just recompress everything to get everything seated again. Alright, now that is exactly perfect. So those wheels are lifting up at exactly the same time. So that's basically your front done. Now we're moving on to the rear. Push your rear down, lift it up. Okay, so now this corner's coming down and this corner's up. So what we need to do is we need to drop this corner, in which case we need to screw this side in to drop this corner and this side out. So we'll go 1/4 of a turn in, 1/4 of a turn out. Check it again. Alright, that's almost spot on. We can maybe go a smidge more, just ever so slightly. I mean, when you're fine tuning this stuff, you're literally going in 1/16 of 32nd turn. I mean, you just have to tweak it just that very little bit. It can all make a difference. Alright, now that is absolutely perfect now. So now we've got the whole car with exactly the same amount of up travel. What this basically means is that your ride height's going to be exactly the same left and right of the car. And as well, when the car's pitching and stuff, it's not going to have a lot of up travel one way and not so much the other. So it just gets everything square. Before doing all this, make sure that your droop is exactly the same left to right. If your droop's out, you're basically wasting your time doing this because you're going to be tweaking to something that's got different droop. So just double check, triple check your droop. Make sure that everything's identical left to right. On the automatics, I tend to run about 5/4 at the front, 4/4 at the rear. So basically that's how to do your tweak. If you follow those steps by getting your chassis flat and then doing all of that with the suspension, generally you'll find your car will be very balanced left to right. I do it sometimes throughout race meets, you know, it's very crucial. It's just as important as the setup, even more important to an extent. It's also important when you change tyres to recheck it, when you change rides heights, you know, when you've gone to a practice day and you've played around with 3 or 4 different ride height settings, you might have just, you know, tweaked one a little bit more than the other. It's good to then go put it back up on the setup wheels, get everything square again, and then you can move on to your ride height. So pretty much once you've done that, you can set your ride height, put your wheels back on, and then set your ride height on the tyres that you're going to be using. So you can basically, it's not going to be right now because all we've done is tweaked it left to right. So when you put your ride height gauge in with your tyres on, make sure you adjust the left and the right exactly the same amount. Because now what we've done, if we've got that balance left to right, now we need to move them in the same amount in and out. And then that'll keep our chassis flat, just changing our ride height. So I hope this has been useful for you guys. Just follow this process. I can guarantee you it'll work every time. It's pretty easy. Just remember, when you're working on the rear, adjust the front and just think about dropping which corner is going to push that wheel back down. When you're working on the front, you've obviously got to adjust the rear. If you guys have got any questions, you can just email me or comment on my YouTube channel or Facebook. Visit my website. You can keep up to date with all of these, www.rcmaker.com.au. Cheers guys.